Hello, I'm Parneet Jaggi, and this is going to be an interpretation of the poem Not My Best Side by U.A.Fanthorpe. Now, this poem is a light-hearted, joyful, and a surprising poem as well, which delves into the themes of humor, storytelling, and individual perspectives, and moves more like a parody than a poem. Let's begin with the introduction of U.A.Fanthorpe. U.A.Fanthorpe spent her earliest years in Kent. She attended St. Anne's College, Oxford. Afterwards, became a teacher and ultimately the head of English department at Cheltenham Ladies' College. She began writing only when she left this profession of her teaching job, and she went on to become a receptionist at a psychiatric hospital where her observation of the strange specialness of the patients provided the inspiration for her first book, Side Effects. Since that relatively late start, Fanthorpe was prolific, produced 9 full-length collections of writing. She was also awarded the Queen's Gold Medal for Poetry in 2003. Coming to the poem, Not My Best Side. This poem is a poetical and parody-like interpretation of a painting. Paolo Uccello's painting of 1870, St. George and the Dragon, as you can have a look at the painting here. So in this poem, she assumes the thoughts and perspectives of all the 3 characters present in the painting, depicted in the painting, of the mythical slaying of this dragon by St. George. This original myth is taken from a popular collection of saints' lives written in the 13th century called The Golden Legend. Now, because it is a myth, so there are many possible twists and turns in the storyline, and she decides to take it to a completely different level. So let's have a look at the text of the poem, how it proceeds and is full of surprises and twists. Now, in first section, these lines are spoken by the dragon itself. Not my best side, I'm afraid. The artist didn't give me a chance to pose properly, and as you can see, poor chap, he had this obsession with triangles. So he left off 2 of my feet. I didn't comment at the time. What, after all, are the 2 feet to a monster? But afterwards, I was sorry for the bad publicity. Why, I said to myself, should my conqueror be so ostentatiously beardless and ride a horse with a deformed neck and square hoofs? Why should my victim be so unattractive as to be inedible? And why should she have me literally on a string? I don't mind dying ritually, since I always rise again, but I should have liked a little more blood to show they were taking me seriously. Now, what do we get from these lines? Now, the poem starts from the perspective of the dragon. As we know, there are 3 characters in this poem: the dragon, the woman, and the knight. Now, in the initial stanzas, this is the perspective and the thought process of the dragon which is being depicted here. Now, this dragon knows that he has to be slain because that is in the story, but he expresses his disappointment in these lines that this particular knight with his strange horse. Now, we come to know about these introductory characters where he says, what after all are 2 feet to a monster? So he himself is addressing to himself as a monster or a dragon. And then he says, ride a horse with a deformed neck. So he is himself portraying and picturizing the 3 characters present over there. So this is how the dragon starts and initiates the thought process, which is furthered by the woman and the knight. So in these lines, this dragon, who is the speaker, he begins by saying and admitting that the case is that his two front legs have not been painted by the painter. So he is kind of disappointed and sad at this. Now his words are colloquial, simple and easy to understand, where he says, not my best side, I'm afraid, that my painting, the painting which depicts me, is not showing the best side of me. The artist didn't give me a chance to pose properly, and as you can see, poor chap, he had his obsession with triangles, so he left off two of my feet. So he is not happy, he is discontented with the kind of painting he has been put into, and he has been portrayed without its two front leg. Now this choice he made, the painter made, in order to create as many triangles in his painting as possible. Now this was a technique, a triangle technique, which was popularly used during the Renaissance period. Now the dragon doesn't go into too much detail. What he says diminishes what U.A.Fanthorpe as a painter was trying to accomplish. But today, a viewer who is unaware of these artistic techniques like the triangles and why the artist chose to put them into their works would see this composition as a very strange kind of composition in which the dragon himself as a character is speaking about his discontentment. So the dragon speaking, he says that he did not call U.A.Fanthorpe out for this choice when he was being painted. So he thought that it wasn't a big deal at that time for a monster to lack two of his legs. Now though, since the painting has been finished, he thinks that the subtraction makes for a bad publicity. He has been portrayed in a negative image. Now there is an enjambment, if you notice in these lines, which helps to set the reader with a humorous tone and with a surprising conclusion of this section. Then he says, he turns his attention to the knight on the horse, judging him for how he looks and what it means to be slain by such a man whom he is not holding in high esteem. He speaks about the man's lack of beard, which at that time should have been a symbol of strength and manhood, and his very strange horse that he is riding. It has deformed with disproportioned hoofs that are squarer than they should be. He says a horse with a deformed neck and square hoofs. Now these lines again draw a reader's attention to the parts of the painting that we may not notice otherwise. Then the dragon turns to the woman who is chained to him. So now he is supposing, yes, the knight is there to rescue the woman. But humorously, the dragon himself refers to this woman as inedible. Why? Because she is so ugly, he won't even want to eat her. So this is again a humorous touch, a twist to the poem, that there is a woman in the story, but she is not so presentable, and even the dragon does not. He despises her looks. So lastly, the dragon accepts that death is his lot, and he doesn't mind it. He's ready for it. He will die, especially since he knows he will rise again. But then he would like there to be a little more blood. So if present, it would signal that the painter, the storyteller, and the people in the painting, the characters, were taking him more seriously. Now coming to the next section, the next lines. Now these lines have been spoken from the perspective of the woman present over there. She speaks these lines. These are the thoughts of the woman present over there. It's hard for a girl to be sure if she wants to be rescued. I mean, I quite took to the dragon. It's nice to be liked, if you know what I mean. He was so nicely physical, with his claws and lovely green skin and that sexy tail, and the way he looked at me. He made me feel he was all ready to eat me, and any girl enjoys that. So when this boy turned up, wearing machinery on a really dangerous horse, to be honest, I didn't much fancy him. I mean, what was he like underneath the hardware? He might have acne, blackheads, or even bad breath for all I could tell, but the dragon, well, you could see all his equipment at a glance. Still, what could I do? The dragon got himself beaten by the boy, and a girl's got to think of her future. Now this is funny. This is quite humorous in the way the girl is thinking about herself and the way she looks at the dragon and the knight who was there to save her. Now this conversation has been channelized to the second character, this woman. Now just as it happened with the dragon, her voice also does not match the image. It is coming from a different world than what U.A.Fanthorpe was imagining or painting. She states that more often than not, it is hard to know if you want to be rescued. Now this is not so simple and plain and straight. In fact, the girl adds she quite likes the dragon. So this is ironical that she was attracted to the lovely colors and the sexy tail of the dragon and not the man, not the knight who is there to rescue her. The greed in the eyes of the dragon when he looked at her made her feel a way that no man had before. She liked the way of someone wanting to eat her. Now this is quite funny, this is quite out of the way, that this woman is admiring the eyes, the glance of the dragon who has a sexy tail and who wants to eat her. Now on the other hand, she is addressing the man in the machinery. Now this man in the machinery is the armed man, the knight who is there to rescue her. He for her is unattractive, his horse is dangerous, and she can't see why under his hardware, the armor, the weapons he is wearing, to know if he is interesting. There are too many unknowns associated with the man for the girl to commit to being rescued by him. Now this man, this knight, is more mysterious to him than the dragon. Now this is quite humorous, this is quite untraditional and quite ironical. Now she even goes to the extent of saying he might have acne, blackheads, or even bad breath. So she is not kind of attracted to this ordinary manly characteristics of this knight. Any of these things or more would make her want to stay away from this knight and stay with the dragon. Nevertheless, she adds at the end that the dragon was slain by the boy. Now she doesn't say man, she says boy, and she needs to think about her future. So ultimately she knows the dragon has to be slain and she has to be rescued by the knight. But even then she doesn't admit that she is attracted by the knight. On the contrary, she is praising the features of the dragon. Coming to the third section, now here the speaker changes to the man on the horse. Now what is the man saying here? I have diplomas in dragon management and virgin reclamation. My horse is the latest model with automatic transmission and built-in obsolescence. My spear is custom built and my prototype armor still on the secret list. You can't do better than me at the moment. I'm qualified and equipped to the eyebrow. So why be difficult? Don't you want to be killed and or rescued in the most contemporary way? Don't you want to carry out the roles that sociology and myth have designed for you? Don't you realize that by being choosy you are endangering job prospects in the spear and horse building industries? What in any case does it matter what you want? You are in my way. Now see how the scene changes coming to the third character in the poem. This person, this man on the horse, shows confidence similar to that displayed by the other two characters. Now he is not aware of how the other two people have made fun of him, his manliness and his horse. In fact, he describes himself and his horse with a different air of confidence. He says that he even has diplomas in dragon management and virgin reclamation. Now this genuinely funny detail shows his bravado and his starchy seriousness about his own achievements. Now, like any stereotypical man bragging about his knowledge, about his career, his profession, his achievements, he is talking in detail on the automatic transmission of his horse, and very amusingly, its built-in obsolescence. Now he addresses the speaker and his armor similarly, referring to the latter as still on the secret list. So his words are juxtaposed here with those of the words of dragon and the girl. Both the previous speakers made fun of his looks, his apparent strengths, but he doesn't see that perspective. He has his own perspective to display. He thinks that he is at the top of this game of dragon slaying and woman rescuing. Now, the last lines of this third section convey his confusions over the dragon's choice to push back against the roles that sociology and myth have designed for him. Shouldn't the dragon want to be killed in a new contemporary way? Now, because he is qualified and equipped with the latest equipment and degrees, so he is questioning, shouldn't the dragon want to be killed in this way? Now, although the dragon does know that he has to be slain, yet he has a very different opinion about the knight than what the knight knows about himself. Now, towards the end, we see that the knight becomes more frustrated, trying to convince the dragon not to make this harder than it needs to be. And he thinks that he's endangering the industry that the knight depends on wholly. Finally, in his irritation, he tells the dragon it doesn't really matter what he thinks and that he is in his own way a knight. So he will follow his own way in doing what he has come there for. He's not going to look at their perspectives and view their perspectives before doing anything. So this was how the poem proceeds with several twists and surprising turns in the story. Basically, there are three perspectives by three characters of the painting. Now, we see that the poem delves into themes of humor, storytelling, and three individual perspectives. And there is a variation of tone throughout, but it is definitely quick, funny, and detailed. And the poet Fanthorpe is able to create a light-hearted and joyful atmosphere. Now, we've already talked about the three perspectives here. Let's talk about the structure of the poem. It's a 3-stanza poem that is separated into sets of 19 lines each. We've already seen the 3 sections, the 3 stanzas, defining the 3 perspectives in the form of dragon, woman, and knight. Now, these lines of the poem, they do not follow a specific rhyme scheme or a metrical pattern. They're written in free verse, but there is half rhyme. Half rhyme, also known as slant or partial rhyme, is seen through the repetition of assonance or consonants. Now, this means that there is a reuse or repetition of either a vowel sound or a consonant sound. For example, the sound of r consonant in line 12 of the first stanza, or dying and rise in line 16 and 17 of the first stanza. Talking of the poetic techniques used in the poem, we have a number of them. For example, the most prominent technique used is juxtaposition. Now, what is juxtaposition? We see that there are contrasting things placed near one another to emphasize that contrast. Now, here we have 3 characters. We have 3 characters, but we also have 3 perspectives. Their features are juxtaposed, presented in contrast with each other to bring out the prominence of these features. So this is juxtaposition used throughout this poem. Then there is, of course, alliteration, when we see that words are used in succession and there is repetition of the same sound. For example, beaten and boy. Then there is enjambment. Enjambment, we know, is when a line is cut off before its natural stopping point. It forces a reader down to the next line and the next quickly. So we have to move forward in order to comfortably resolve a phrase or a sentence. That means we do not stop at the end of each poetic line. So we see here that the poem moves like a story, like a narrative, like as if we have to quickly proceed to something, and some discovery, some dawn is going to appear in the next line. So enjambment helps to follow the quickness of the plot or the dramatic opening. Then there are examples of caesura. Now, caesura is again, in contrast to enjambment, it splits the poetic line into half. With the help of punctuation, there is a use of punctuation in somewhere in the middle of the line. So this creates a very intentional pause in the text. So a reader should consider how the pause influences the rhythm of one's reading and how it might precede an important turn or transition in the text. For instance, in the final line of the poem, "You want," there is a sign of interrogation, "you're in my way." Or in line